Hi there friends, it's Miss Eliza, Children's Librarian at the Waukee Public Library, and I'm here to share with you a fun maker project to celebrate Earth Day. So on Earth Day, it's a great time to think about the way that we treat the planet and ways that we can help the planet by reducing, reusing, and recycling materials that we use in our daily lives. So this project is going to be made entirely of recycled and reused materials, and we are making these little plastic coasters. So these coasters are made entirely out of something you probably have a lot of at home, plastic bags. And I've got this big box of plastic bags that we've been collecting here at the library. So we have some that are long and skinny. These are like the kind that newspaper comes in, or maybe you put fruit or vegetables in at the store. And then we also have a bunch of regular shopping bags. So plastic bags like these are actually really hard to recycle because they're so thin and they can sometimes gunk up the machinery that we use in recycling, and not all places that are recycling centers can process this particular type of plastic. So it's something that often ends up in a landfill. And we can definitely reduce our use of bags like this, but if you do have some at home, and a lot of us do, it's a really good thing to be able to make a project that uses them. So we are going to weave them, just like yarn, into these plastic coasters. The things that you'll need for this project, besides a whole bunch of plastic sacks, are a piece of cardboard, and it can be any shape and size that you'd like. You can see that ours is not super big. It's maybe not quite even a foot long, and it really depends on the shape of what you want to make. So you can see that this kind of fits right in the middle. So if you want something that's coaster shaped, you're going to want something that's a little bit taller than it is wide across. And if you got a pack from the library, you've got your base already, but you can do this same technique with any kind of shape. Then you're also going to want a ruler, and that's going to help you measure out all the different places that you need to cut. So you will need some scissors as well. So the last thing that you're going to need is a lot of patience. Because even though this project is pretty simple, it's a pretty simple technique, it does take a little while to get the weaving set up and to finish your weaving, but the result is so cool in the end. I've had this plastic coaster for 5 years and I still use it on my desk every day, which is a great reuse of something that otherwise might end up in a landfill. So this project has 2 major steps, and I'm going to show you the first one now. So you're going to want to start by making all of the plastic yarn that you're going to use. It's called plastic yarn. So I'm going to show you how you can make that out of these plastic bags. Once we have all that yarn, I'll show you how to do the weaving. All right, friends, so I'm going to show you now how to create plastic yarn. That's the thin, long pieces of these plastic bags that we're going to use to weave our coaster. So you can do that with any size plastic bag. I have a regular size kind of grocery sack here, and I also have one of these smaller bags that our newspaper comes in at the library. So I'm going to show you, it's the same technique for both of these, and even for any other size bag. You could even use like a garbage bag if you have one at home. Anything that you have that's pretty clean and dry, and you can do it with any size, but I'm going to show you on this small one first, and then basically the same technique goes for the larger bag, but that's a little harder to see, so I'll show you that second. All right, friends, so here's our little bag, and you can see that I've spread it out and kind of gotten all the wrinkles out. It's nice and flat as it can be. This end is the end that was closed. So we're going to need to trim off this little seam here so that both ends are open on our little bag. So you can just cut the very bottom off that has the opening, and then you can see you can go open on either side of the bag. But we want it like nice and flat for now and smoothed out. And it's still got its folded edges or its sealed edges on the top and bottom, and that's what we want. So we're going to start cutting, and we're going to cut from one side about 1 inch, or maybe between 1 inch and 2 inches. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to be very precise. We're gonna cut a little strip up here, and then you can see I stopped and you want to leave about an inch, at least an inch, between the fold and where your cut ends. And then you're going to go down the whole bag, making these little slits. All right, I cut all the strips out, so it's still connected at the top and the bottom, but we've got little strips here. And you can see that mine aren't all exactly the same. They're not all perfectly straight. It really doesn't matter. It's just gonna be the thread that we use to weave. So since it's open on both sides, you wanna come up to the edge that's all one piece still. So this is where that fold was in the bag, and we're gonna kinda shake it out so that we can see that fold. And you can see now there's strips going this direction and this direction. This is the folded part that we had up at the top. Now this is where it gets tricky. It's a little hard to show you, but it's really easy to do, I promise. So just stick with me. So you see how these two cuts are two sides of the same strip that I cut at the very edge of my bag when I was cutting my strips. So we're going to start making cuts, but this time we're gonna go on the diagonal, because if we cut this straight across, we'll just have one little ring of plastic instead of a long strip. So what you wanna do is go from this first cut you made, or the first one that you can see, and then instead of going to the cut that's straight across from it, you're gonna jog over one and go to the cut on the diagonal. So let me show you what I mean. So here is one set of cuts, and instead of going right across, we're going to start here and then jump down one over on the diagonal. Okay, so now we've made that first cut, and then we're gonna continue doing that all the way down. So for our next cut, we're gonna start here and then go to the next one on the diagonal. It's hard to show because the plastic all looks the same on the camera, but I promise once you get going, it's pretty simple. You're just following the cuts that you already made and going on the diagonal right across all the way down. Be careful that you don't cut the strips. You just want to cut right across that fold in the bag that used to be at the very top. So we're going to keep cutting on the diagonal, scooch it down, diagonal cut. Here's our cut, and we're going to go one over. Here's our cut, and we're going to go one over. There we go. There we go. There we go. All right, we're almost to the end. What do you think's gonna happen? So this is the last cut on this side. So this cut is just gonna go right to the edge. So you see we've got the end of this strip, but then no other strip on that, or no other cut on that side. So we're gonna just go straight to the end. And now look, somehow magically, we've got one big, long piece of plastic yarn. Look at all of this. We turned our whole bag into one big piece of yarn. Now, if you pull it all the way through and go back to the beginning, you'll see that first loop that we made. So you can just cut this the same way we did the last one. You see we've got our cut here, and then there's no cut to follow through on the other side. So we'll just go again on a diagonal cut like that to finish it off. One long strip. Now you can roll it up just like a regular ball of yarn. Nice rolling, friends. Now wait a minute. What happens if we accidentally cut or tear our yarn? Oh no! Well, you can have two shorter pieces of yarn, which is completely fine, or if you want to work with one long strip, all you need to do is tie them together. This is how we're going to make our weaving. So we're going to be doing lots of tying knots, and it might even be good to practice when you're making your little plastic yarn. So you can just tie, and I probably would tie 2 knots into your plastic yarn, just like that, and then you can trim off these little end pieces. It's no big deal if you tear it or if there's a hole in the bag. You can still use that bag. It's perfectly good for this project, which is one of the reasons why plastic weaving is such a good thing for the environment, because you can use bags even if they have a hole or are torn, and then they're not very useful as bags anymore. Now I'm going to show you how you can use the same technique but on a slightly bigger bag. So for a full-size grocery bag, we're gonna do the same process, but we want it to be open on both ends, which means that we're gonna cut this sealed end off, that bottom piece, we're gonna cut that so it's open over here. And then we also don't really want the handles, so we're going to cut the part with the handles off and put that to the side. So you could even use these little scrap pieces and tie them onto the end of your plastic yarn, so you don't even have to waste these little bits. But for now, we're going to just try to get that open bag. So you can kind of put your hands in and squish out the sides. And you can see we've got a hole here in this bag. And so that's okay. I'll show you how to work around that. So you're gonna kind of spread it out and get it as flat and even as you can. And then you want both of the open sides on the edges. So we want a sealed up top again, and a sealed up bottom, and then we want the sides to be open. Now, you can go ahead and use the exact same technique that we had before, which is you can start cutting strips from the bottom of here all the way up to the top, leaving about an inch in between. I can show you what I'm gonna do about this tear. So now you see we've got this tear spot here, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut this strip the same, just right over that tear. And then when we get to this, while we're rolling up our yarn, we'll just go ahead and make a knot there. So I'm gonna finish this bag off and I'll join you in a second. All right, friends, we've got our bag finished. There's the sealed top and all the little strips hanging down. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing we did before, which is we're going to go through the sides and try to open up that piece that's still connected, that fold on the side, the part that we cut up to. And we're gonna follow the same technique we did before. So you see we've got our cuts here that line up side to side, but instead of cutting right across, we're gonna skip one and go down to this second one. Instead of going right across, we're gonna skip and go down to this second one on a diagonal cut. So we're gonna go here, start here, and then not go across. We're gonna go down on the diagonal to find this cut. I'm gonna keep doing that as we go down and on the diagonal. Again, you wanna do this flat against the table, but I'm trying to kind of hold it up so that you can see it on camera. All right, so we've got our yarn, and you notice that there's two different colors here. So for this video, I'm going to use this blue one to make the base, the horizontal lines that we're gonna be weaving through. But you can also cut smaller pieces out of any different colored bags that you have and tie them end to end if you want your weaving to have a lot of different colors in it. So that's kind of going to be up to you and whatever bags that you have on hand. They come in all sorts of different colors, and all you have to do to switch the colors is just make a cut and then tie a new color onto the old color. You can also keep this going. You know, I could tie the blue right onto the pink and just keep rolling and make one big long yarn ball. And you could keep doing that every time you guys use up a bag at home. Maybe you could cut it up and add it to your yarn ball. So you might end up with a whole bunch of plastic yarn and be able to make even a really big project. All right, friends, so to get your cardboard set up, again, you can kind of do any shape that you like. It works better if it's for this particular project to have something that's taller than it is wide. You're gonna go down the sides and make cuts about an inch apart. So for that, I used a ruler, which is here, and I measured 1 inch, and then I put a little pencil mark and then went all the way down and then did the same thing on the other side. And then I went through with my scissors and carefully made a little cut on each of my pencil marks. And that cut can go about an inch or maybe 2 inches in. Again, this is a great project because it doesn't have to be very precise. So once you've got all your little cuts here, you might also want to fold them a little bit or give them a little bend so that when you're weaving through your base plastic, it's not as hard to get into those little slots, because what we're going to be doing is threading our plastic base through them to make horizontal lines all the way up and down. So if you kind of bend the sides back and forth a little bit, it'll give you a little bit more room in between each of those, so when you slide the plastic in, it's less likely to tear. Once you've got all your little cuts in the sides, you're going to want to start stringing through your base. So again, I'm going to use the blue for that, and I'm going to go ahead and start it by just pushing one end through one of the slits like that, and it should slide right through. So you can see it's kind of, I'm leaving a little bit of a tail on one side, and then we're gonna pull it across pretty tight and then slide it through the other one. So you don't wanna pull really, really hard because you can see the plastic will stretch and eventually it is gonna tear if you pull really hard. So we've got it coming through now on both sides, and don't worry about this tail for now because we're gonna use that a little bit later. But you're gonna kind of continue, and then again, just like when we were cutting, we're gonna go down one, the next one here, right under where we started, pull it across, and then pull it through. Oh. Whoop. Oh no, friends, what happened? Yeah, I pulled really hard and I broke my plastic. However, we're gonna just go ahead and tie it back together and keep on going. It is really hard to mess up this plastic weaving. So we're gonna go right through to the next one and keep on wrapping. If you got a pack from the library, this part's already been done for you. But this is how you do it at home. I'm gonna finish wrapping it around and then I'll show you how we tie it off at the end. All right, so I wove all the way through. You can see they go all the way across in those little lines. I went all the way down, and then this is what the black looks like. So this is where we started, and we have our little tail here, and then this part is still connected, to my big ball of plastic yarn over here. So what we're going to do is take this piece and then trim this so that it's about as long. And now we've got this plastic yarn that we can use for another project. And then we're going to tie these two on the diagonal right across from each other. All right, so in the end, this is the back, and then this is the front. And now we're ready to start our weaving. All right, friends, so I've got my little base, and if you're doing this project at home, especially if you're going to choose a project like a rug or a big something that's bigger, it's gonna take a while. So a lot of times people keep weavings and work on them for months. So this little cardboard loom isn't like a big loom that weaves rugs and stuff, although you could even make one that big if you really wanted. But our little loom is also okay to put aside. You'll be able to kind of work on this as you have the time or as you come across more plastic that you want to weave into here. So you don't have to do this all at once. Once you've got this part set up, and if you got a kit from the library, this is kind of where you're starting and joining in with us. You're going to want to start your weaving by tying on. So you're going to take the end of your piece of plastic yarn, and it doesn't really matter which part you start with, but you're going to kind of lift up the plastic piece of the base and then just tie your yarn right onto it, right on the corner, right where it starts. And again, we're using thin plastic, which is great because it's so hard to recycle. But one of the reasons it's hard to recycle and reuse is that it's not very sturdy. So we want to be sure that we're tying, but we're not pulling too hard because we don't really want to break the plastic or stretch it out too thin. And also, we don't really need to pull it that hard. We're just making a little woven coaster. So I've tied this on. You can see it's on the very, very edge corner here. And if you'd like to, you can cut this little tail off so that it's a little easier to see. Now, if you've got your yarn in a big ball, that kind of helps you as you start your weaving because you can use it to help push through. So the basic concept of weaving is that you want to follow a pattern that goes over. So I'm gonna go over this bar and then under the next one. So weaving is all about going over, under, over, under, over, under. And that creates kind of a tightness that keeps it together. And that's why when you have one that's finished, you can kind of tug on it and move it and it's still staying in one place because all of them are kind of crossed together and interlaced. And that's what makes a weaving stick. So we're going to start by going over this one and then we'll go under the second one, every other one. So if you've got a ball, you can kind of push it through and pull. And now you see here, we've got the over piece and the under piece. This one's over the top and this one's underneath. And we're gonna just keep doing the same thing again. And under this one. Now you can see I'm kind of using the ball to kind of push through over this one, under this one. But that can be kind of difficult to handle, to push it through. So you're welcome to cut a smaller piece of yarn You'll just need to tie on another piece to keep going. But if you don't want to carry all this with you through your whole weaving, you certainly don't have to. You can cut smaller pieces as well. So now we've got to the end and we just went under this one, so we would go over this one, but we're gonna have to go the other direction now. So we're gonna loop it under and pull it. And now you see, when you're going back the other direction, I can pull it tight and it's gonna really bend this up, but we don't need to do that. We can kind of keep it straighter. So it doesn't matter if it moves a little bit, but you don't have to pull super, super tight. It's gonna be moving as we weave. They're all gonna be moving a little bit as we weave. So we can kind of tug it, make sure it's nice and straight and nothing's getting too warped, and then we're gonna keep on weaving. So we're gonna go under this last one and head back this direction, but I wanted to pause here to show you that we've got these 2 rows now going across this base that we made of the vertical strips. And you can kind of see these are moving around a little bit. They're kind of shifting in place, and that's fine. You can kind of tug gently on the end when you get to an end, and then shift it back down towards the direction where you started. And that's helpful because it means that we have plenty of room to work with. So you can see that this plastic takes up a lot of space, but when we push it together and kind of tighten it up a little bit, we still have a lot of room to work with. So to counter the volume that we're gonna find from this material that we're using, when you get to an end, you can kind of, or maybe you make a couple rows, and then when you're at an end, you can kind of squish it down and make sure that it's in the right spot. Now I'm gonna do a couple more rows and you can see how the process goes, and then I'm gonna show you how to switch colors, okay? All right, friends, so I've done a few more rows, and as I mentioned, you can see that things are kind of getting pulled around, and that's totally okay. We're just going to kind of pull a little bit tighter when we get to the end of each row, and then slide them all down as far as we can towards the bottom or where we started. So we're just gonna kind of push it so that we have as little space as possible in between the rows, because that's gonna help us keep it nice and tight. So it doesn't matter quite as much how tight it is going this way, but we want these to be nice and tight. And when you get to the end of each row, you can kind of gently tug and make sure that you didn't leave too much space. We're just gonna kind of squish it down as we go along, and you'll do that over and over and over. Now we've got a couple rows of pink here, but what if we wanted to switch colors? So if you got a pack from the library, you've got a couple different little balls of yarn in different colors, of plastic yarn in different colors. So if you wanted to tie them off at any point or change colors at any point, all you're gonna do is cut it wherever you wanna stop. So maybe like right here. And you wanna leave a little bit because you're gonna have to make a knot, of course. So now I've got a smaller piece of this green yarn here, and I'm just going to tie those two together using a nice double knot. So I'll just tie it on, pull it tight, not too tight, we don't wanna tear it, and then tie it on again. If you do tear it, it's okay, you can just start over. We've got these little tails, so I'm gonna go ahead and trim those off so I don't get confused. And then we're gonna start again just using this little green piece as our main piece of weaving. So the last thing that the pink yarn did was go under, so we're gonna go over this next one and under, and then over. And then if you don't wanna pull it through every time, you can do several at once. So we came out under, we're gonna go over this one, under this one, and then I'm gonna go right over this next one and under the next one, and then right over and right under and right over and right under and right over the very end, and then pull the whole thing through in one go. So it's kind of up to you how comfortable you feel and which method works better for you. Again, when you get to an end, you can kind of tug it so that it's a little bit tight, scooch it down, and then we're gonna go back in the other direction. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this off camera. I'm gonna weave till the end of my green thread and leave a little bit here and then tie on another color of plastic yarn. And then I'll come back to show you what it'll look like when we're all finished. All right, friends, so I went ahead and did a little bit more weaving. I finished this row of green. You can see I cut that one and added on a stripe of blue here, and then I went back to the pink to add a couple rows. And I wanted to pop back in just to mention that as you get closer to this edge, it does get a little bit harder to work your thread that you're weaving with up and under because it's getting kind of tight. We don't have as much room. Remember when we first started and these pieces were kind of flopping up and down all over the place? So it does get tighter as we work on the weaving. That's kind of how it stays together. So it's pretty cool to see that happening, but it does get tighter over here and a little bit harder. So now is probably a time, if you haven't already, that you want to cut smaller pieces and kind of work at pulling those through instead of going through with the whole ball of plastic yarn. It's probably a little bit easier to do it with a smaller piece at this point, and you can stop wherever you like. So you can see if I stopped here, it would be pretty thin. It would almost be enough to put like a glass or a can on, but it's not maybe quite as wide as I'd like. So I'm gonna try to do a couple more rows, but it's gonna just go a little bit slower because we don't have quite as much wiggle room over here. And you can stop, of course, wherever you like. But for this, I'm gonna do maybe a couple more rows and then I'll check back in with you to finish it off. All right, I wove a couple more rows and I maybe could even go a couple more columns with this last piece, but I'm gonna leave it here because you do want to tie off the end at one of the corners, just like we started. So this one has a little tail on it and I'm gonna tie it to that very last piece on the edge, kind of the same way we started it, just tie a regular knot and then double knot it. And you do want to make sure that this one is as tight as it can be because we don't want it to loosen up all of the weaving that we just did. And then just like we've been doing this whole time, we're going to go ahead and cut the little tail off at the end of the knot. All right, so I tied it on there and I did cut the little tail off. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes it's kind of nice having those little tail pieces, and we're gonna actually leave a little bit on the edge of these ones to kind of look like tassels, that kind of just like a decoration for your coaster. So now that it's all done, you can see that it's a little bit rounder on this edge than this edge. That means this side's a little bit tighter. So I'm just gonna kind of squish it apart a little bit. You don't wanna do too much, but you can kind of just change the shape a little bit by kind of rubbing it and pushing and making them nice and even. Like you can see, I've got a little bit more of this pink on this side, so I'm just gonna kind of spread that out a little bit to make it a little bit more even, a little bit more in that shape of a coaster. And then when you're happy with how it looks, you're gonna go to the back side and you're just gonna cut right down the front. So again, you'll do this flat on a table, but I'm holding it up so that I can do that for the video. So you'll first cut this piece that goes diagonal and kind of move those to the side. And then you're just gonna cut right up every one of these so that in the end, kind of right up the middle, so you have nice long tails on either side because we are gonna tie those. So you're gonna kind of just cut all the way up. So now they're all kind of loose in here and we do still have these two corner pieces. So then flip it back over to the front, and how we're gonna end this is you're gonna pull two apart at a time really nice and carefully. So just kind of slide them out, and again, if you need to kind of move the loom itself to help get them out, that's fine too. And then you're gonna just take two at a time. You're gonna tie these off and try to make that tie really close, that knot really close to where your weaving ends. And you're gonna definitely wanna double knot this one as well. So we'll just tie that and then really get it nice down close to where your weaving ends. And then we'll tie it again. And maybe one more time just to be extra safe since I'm holding it at this funny angle. All right, there we go. So that one's done. And then we're just gonna go down with every pair, just do one set at a time and take them off of the loom, those end pieces off of the loom, just two at a time. And then go ahead and make your knots nice and close to the weaving because the weaving is gonna go out as far as your knots do. So those knots are gonna kind of be the barrier that keeps your weaving. So if you want something to be a little bit more spread out, just make sure that you spread out your little pieces and then tie the knot where you want the edge to be. You're gonna make sure that you kind of get it in the shape that you like. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take down all these different pairs, tie them all up, and I'll show you how it looks when we get back. All right, so this is what it looks like. It's kind of wild looking right now, huh? I just tied off all the different pairs, and at the end, you might actually end up with an odd number of these, depending on how many cuts you had. Remember, every piece of cardboard that you use or get for a loom is going to be a little bit different size, so it's gonna have a different number of cuts along the sides, and that might mean that you have an odd number, and there's just one little flap left at the end, and that's okay, because you can just go ahead and tie it on to the last knot that you made, just like any other one. So it really is okay if it's an odd number. So now we want to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and trim these tails off, but I'm not going to trim them all the way down to the knot because, well, one, we don't want them to come untied, but also it looks kind of cute to have a little bit of extra kind of poofing out at the end. So I'm going to maybe leave about an inch up from the knot, and I'm going to go ahead and cut all of those down. All right, here we go. So now here's how it looks, and it just has a little bit of pop of color on the edges where we left those little blue ties. And now your weaving is all ready. Now, if you pulled super hard, you could definitely either tear some of the plastic or pull this weaving apart, because we didn't do one that's super complex or super tight. We wanted everybody to be able to do this project at home. So we did a pretty simple version, but you could definitely make this a lot tighter, just squishing down all of those rows and really packing on the plastic yarn. You could also do different patterns. So if you get really excited and you wanted to create a pattern in here instead of just stripes or one color, you could tie off and change colors of yarn every couple inches. You could make different shapes depending on where those colors fall in each row. So there's a lot of ways that you can make really pretty complicated designs with this. We just kind of did the simplest version of this project, but I would be so excited to see all the cool things that you guys could make. And because it's plastic, that means that if you have any condensation, that's that liquid that gathers on the outside of a cool beverage, none of that's going to get on the table if you put it right on top of your coaster. So that's a really great way to reuse some plastic bags that you have at home. And you can also do all kinds of different projects with this. You could make a bag, you could make a vest, you could make a big rug to go in your room that's all different colors. You could make a little pad to have outside and you can use it to sit on the grass. There's all kinds of different things that you can do with this exact same method. So I hope that that inspires you to reuse some plastic bags, one of the hardest things on our planet in terms of recycling and energy cost. So it would be super great if we could find some different ways to reuse those in our home. Thank you for watching this Earth Day video, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.